I thought writers would get together and they'd say, hey, how do you write and what's your contract? And they'd get together and they'd drink. Because I always had this Ernest Hemingway kind of image of writers, that they'd be this tribe of people. And I realized that writers, to be a writer, you have to have a huge ego and you have to spend a lot of time alone. And that's not really conducive for like wild socializing.
I don't feel part of a writing community, and I don't really need to be. I don't really know what it means to be part of a writing community.
I'm not a community kind of person. I live in the woods and I don't have a lot to do with... I have a group of friends, but they're not writers.
It might be truer to say I feel I live in a community of artists. That's probably a little closer to the truth, because I haven't spent a lot of time with writers talking about writing.
I think the idea of a community is marvelous, but personally speaking, although I suppose I am part of a writing community here, I never feel that way, and I feel like an alien, and I feel like an alien in the theater community as well. And maybe that's just my personality, because I think I am accepted by the writing community, but to be a part of a community doesn't necessarily make you feel less alone.
I think it is important to have a writing community, but it can also be an imaginary one. So, I mean, my writing community is the books that I read all the time. So I think it's very comforting. I talk to dead people all the time, and I love it. So I can talk to Philip Sidney in the Renaissance, and I can talk to... I can talk to Henry Fielding from the 18th century, and then I can talk to Don Quixote, and I love being inside of books, and every time I reread them, I realize that's a very deep writing community for me, or actually the books.
Your real immediate aesthetic or intellectual family are the writers that sustain you. And I still feel that when my sentences got sticky and kind of bogged down too much in story and what happened later, I would pull John Barrowman's poems off the shelf and just start reading them. Okay, get back the juice back, or I'll reread Anthony Burgess or Virginia Woolf or somebody, her nonfiction as opposed to her fiction, and it gives me that. And ultimately, you're really trying to impress them. You want to be part of that club, and you probably fail, but you aspire to it. I mean, you really want to be, that's why you started writing, right? You wanted to be doing what they're doing. You want to have the fun they're having. You want to have the effect on others that they had on you.
But it also helps to have real people to talk to and to have dinner with, too.
The writing community was very important for me. I mean, I wouldn't have written except for Lisa Moore, who I met when we were really young, telling me I should go to a writing class with her, and we did, and I met Ramona Deering and Claire Wilkshire and Larry Matthews and a whole bunch of other writers, and we wrote together, and we were living in St. John's, and we decided to make a kind of a business out of it. We were going to write short stories, print them off, send them out to the magazines we liked, and get published. And we weren't going to get just published in Newfoundland, we were going to get published in Canada. We wanted the world to read our stuff. There was a whole generation of Newfoundland writers before us, just as good as us, but they seemed to be happy to be published in Newfoundland. And we just kind of made it, we wanted to make a statement that we were going to get published around the world if we could. And I think that takes a kind of gutsiness that's hard to maintain if you're just on your own. You need friends alongside doing it with you.
In New York City, I worked in a place called the Writers' Room. For 10 years I was a member there. And I met some wonderful people there, and it was great to work. The atmosphere, it's hard to describe the atmosphere. It's a bit like a graduate center, a graduate department. There's kind of this atmosphere of hushed productivity, which is very helpful.
I'm part of a writing group now, which I wasn't a part of before, but I spent about 3 years before my first novel, my second book, came out, working on a book that I eventually ended up throwing away. And I thought, I'm never going to do this again. I'm not going to let it go that far without showing people what I'm working on, so they can either say, this isn't the best idea, or this is where you're kind of veering off the path. So now I'm part of a writing group in San Francisco with about 7 other published writers. They're all novelists, and we show each other our work pretty religiously. We meet about once a month, and that's been really helpful for me.
I know that some writers don't need that community, but I really do, and I like to have immediate feedback from something that I've written. Not that I always follow the suggestions of my fellow writers, but in a group. But I like to hear their first impressions of a character or a scene, or just something I'm doing. But it's also, there's a social aspect to it that I really enjoy too.
One of the things I always imagined is this, when I started writing, was this salon culture where we'd all sit around and drink single malt Scotch and talk about writing, and it actually hasn't been that far off from that for me.
Sometimes I need that going out and getting pissed drunk with a writer friend and complaining about stuff and woe is us and raging against the system sort of stuff.
That's why we love going to literary festivals. When somebody invites me to go to one, I always go, because I always know, it's good promotion and it's fun and I like to read my work to an audience, but I'm going to have some great shop talk with colleagues.
Talking about your agent, talking about the marketing or lack of it for behind the book, talking about the difficulties of getting the message about the book out.
We talk about literature a lot, of course. We talk about the struggles of the writing life a lot. Sometimes we don't even talk about writing. We just talk about ways of seeing the world.
But a lot of the times it moves to the balance of writing and life and work and play. I think that's where it always comes to.
I often think about writing as the invisible profession, in that we close a door and we reemerge years later with this offering, with this kind of letter to the world. And so in that interim period, which is, as I said, invisible and entirely hidden, completely mysterious, and usually maybe superstitiously unspoken,